you go.
Okay, thank you. So our goal for today is to present information on how the city is planning to use the ARPA funding allotted to the city of Pittsfield, and to provide organizations with a with some detail as they're thinking of developing projects and programs and services that are designed especially to meet the challenges that our city and our residents have been facing as a result of the pandemic. And we are really eager to share this information. I know a lot of people have been wondering how the city plans to roll out the funding. So this is the first of conversations we'll be having with you. And then, you know, of course, we're available as we move forward in the application process. But this should at least give you an outline to get started with today. Okay, next slide, please. So the Federal American Rescue Plan Act has allocated $65.1 billion in local government direct aid, in addition to $1.8 trillion allocated through other agencies, for a total of $1.9 trillion in stabilization funding. And this is intended to prioritize the stabilization of local government operations, households, small businesses, and economic sectors that have been most impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And it positions communities on a path to economic recovery. So the funds that are available to Pittsfield is a total of $32.4 million plus $8 million that will be received in two parts in 12 months apart. So the city has received the initial $20 million and is in the process of allocating these funds. So there are other potential federal and state sources that you may be aware of. You may be waiting for specific guidelines to come through to your specific sector or organizations. Those include the areas of transportation, education, energy and environmental affairs, health and human services, labor and workforce development, housing and economic development, and public safety and security. So there are other large pots of money, but today we're going to specify what's available through the ARPA funding to the city of Pittsfield. Next slide, please. So for investing in our future, the funding will be used specifically to respond to the COVID-19 public health emergency, to address our negative economic impacts, to help neighborhoods disproportionately impacted, specifically the Morningside and Westside communities, to offset loss of local government revenue, and that's based on a standard methodology. And we're going to invest in our water and sewer infrastructure. Next slide. So the key dates to keep in mind, this funding will be received in 2021 and 2022. It all must be obligated by December 31st, 2024, and must all be spent by December 31st, 2026. And this is a one-time source of funding. Okay, so the city has conducted several community forums, has also formed a advisory council of 9 local residents, and has worked over the last several months to put together different categories and specifics for use of the funding. So right now we'll talk about the five different categories. And these are the areas in which we are conducting the virtual forums to further engage various community groups. So our childhood and development and youth interventions, including our daycares, and some examples for spending we might see in this particular category is around COVID-related upgrades for these organizations, or facility or program expansions, maybe new program that would address some of the critical needs that have developed since the pandemic. The second category is in mental health and substance use disorders. So we know that organizations are looking at how to enhance their staffing or training to address the additional needs and to address health equity. Additional programming, perhaps with our younger community, even school-based programs. These are just examples. Facility upgrades and or expansions. The third area is with organizations serving the elderly, veterans, and people with disabilities. The fourth is with community-based initiatives. Examples of potential funding for programs includes community navigators in the areas of public health or housing and or economic development. Capital investments have involving more accessible housing. Programming to address social determinants of health, and community outreach to address the identified needs and guide future funding proposals. We're also working with cultural organizations with hopes that there will be investments made for more community-based programming, job training, and COVID-related capital improvements. So the forums will be held this week with partner organizations and stakeholders in these 5 categories. Next slide, please. So the applications for funding are all required to fit into at least one of the eligibility categories that have been established by the U.S. Department of the Treasury. So Ted is going to do a screen share with Appendix 1. And this is also available currently on the City of Pittsfield's website under the ARPA investments page. And the federal government will look to see that we have allocated funding appropriately to these specific categories. We have to ensure that our funding is not going beyond the scope of these categories in the areas of public health, negative economic impacts. Well, let's start with those two. So in the areas of public health, for example, the City of Pittsfield will continue offering the program and services for COVID-19 vaccinations and testings and contact tracing, and also hope to that our community will be able to look at ways to address the increasing mental health needs or substance abuse needs within the city. So these are the specific categories that would have to be indicated in a request for funding. So scrolling down to the second category of negative economic impacts. So programs that are working to improve assistance to households for food assistance or rent or cash transfers, those eviction prevention, those types of things. Also, proposals that will improve or offer new job training programs or assistance to Pittsfield residents. Also aid to tourism and travel and hospitality. So I'm just listing a couple examples, but I want to make sure that you're aware that this is currently on the city's website, and you can go and take a look, and additional information about what's presented today will be added to the website, and you'll have that to help in developing your proposals. Third category is services to disproportionately impacted communities. So education assistance, early learning, social and emotional mental health services, childcare, healthy childhood environments, more home visiting programs, all qualify for this ARPA funding that's available to us now. Programs and new systems that work to address some of the social determinants of health, where we see inequities in our community, where we see a lack of access for some residents. You know, these are all things that can be funded through our ARPA funds. Infrastructure. Projects that will improve water quality, new systems for drinking water, clean water, are things that the city is currently working on, seeking bids to work on those infrastructure projects. And then, of course, a smaller percentage of the funding will be used for revenue replacement and also for administrative support. Okay, so we will move on to the next slide, Ted. So as I mentioned before, the city had established a advisory council and has really put a lot of work into establishing what the guiding principles are for these investments that we want to work collectively on for our residents of the city of Pittsfield. And so this is such an exciting opportunity to have the resources and to have the partnerships. And you know, so many organizations have already identified the needs, and you know, they've been looking for this infusion of funds to really make a difference, and support our community in ways that we haven't been able to do before, and really to address the negative impact of the pandemic. So this is what the 9-member advisory council has established, and there's a lot to it, and we really appreciate all of the thought and insight and work that they put into this, because it'll really drive how the funding is allocated. So when invested in people and places through shared community engagement, the American Rescue Plan provides a once-in-a-lifetime infusion of funds that can transform Pittsfield into a city of social and economic resiliency for everyone, especially for people who have been historically underserved, marginalized, and adversely affected by racial inequity and generational poverty. A place where people are able to live up to their greatest potential, achieve prosperity, and experience health, well-being, and joy. So to achieve this, 6 goals have been developed, and these will also be posted on the city website within the next few days. First, we're looking for investments that will strive towards ensuring city residents have a comfortable, safe, and dignified place to call home. Also, projects that will create safe and healthy neighborhoods supported by quality infrastructure, access to affordable childcare, and opportunities for job training and financial security. Projects that will enhance community access to public health, mental and behavioral health, and youth services. Projects that will strengthen and engage community partners to increase community access to services, housing resources, and economic opportunities. Projects that will support creativity, the expression of culture and artistic excellence, so that everyone has access to the arts and an opportunity for self-expression. And the sixth goal is projects that will build the power and voice of lower income people and people of color to share in the future of their community and lives. So the council envisions that these goals will be met through proposals that meet criteria of these investment strategies. Proposals that will prioritize investments serving historically underserved residents. Proposals that will support entrepreneurs, small businesses, with an emphasis on businesses owned by people of color and immigrants, and that are located in Morningside, Westside, and downtown. Proposals that will support community initiative and leadership, and will improve the city's public infrastructure and are transformational and/or enhance resiliency. So there will be evaluation criteria that will be weighted, and in the application, the city will look to see that the following criteria is addressed in the partnerships and the programs and the approaches that they plan to pursue. So looking to see that the applicant is located in or services the Morningside and or Westside neighborhoods, or is led by or primarily serves people of color, immigrants, the disabled, or veterans. That the proposals fosters partnerships and collaborations, targets investments in or to residents of Morningside, Westside, and or downtown, including people of color and immigrants. Proposals that address a physical or social determinant of health, and that it is a one-time investment or can reasonably be expected to be financially sustainable. Projects that bring a new component to an existing program or introduces a new approach to addressing an identified community need, and addresses a need that is supported by community-based data and or community engagement. And hoping to see proposals that address an identified and documented systems gap or flow in existing policies, programming, or program delivery to target underlying inequities. So we also want to give you a sense of what the time frame is. So we hope that all of you will watch the city website and specifically the ARPA webpage for updates on the application process. As I mentioned before, we will be posting all of the detailed information that's presented here today and provide updates as we move forward. We're expecting that the invitation for funding proposal will be released in early January, and we will be sending email announcements to all of you when that application is available on the city's website. And then we will begin accepting applications 30 days after the release of the invitation for funding proposals. And we certainly understand that organizations have been waiting to understand what the guidance and time frame would be from the city for the ARPA funding, and we understand that it takes time to put together proposals, especially that are in collaboration with other organizations. And so there will be a rolling application process. So there will be no deadline. It's you know, at your pace, but we also hope you know that we understand the urgency to address the critical needs that exist now in our community, because of the pandemic over the last 2 years. So we hope to work together with our applicants to provide the funding as quickly as possible. But decisions are targeted for 30 to 45 days after submittal of an application. All right, so now we would like to open up discussion among the attendees, specifically around what you are seeing with the ongoing pandemic challenges with the families you serve and work with every day. And what are some of the recovery needs? Maybe what are some of the proposal ideas that you've already have been working on and you want to discuss a little bit with us or with other potential partner organizations? And then also feel free to ask questions, give us your suggestions, your observations about the guidance that has just been presented.
So Gina, before we move into the discussion, I could just add a couple of things. First of all, Kelly had asked if the slides would be posted or be available after this. I've just gotten confirmation that in the last half an hour, the investment guidelines, which is what Gina's basically walked through, as finalized in consultation with the Mayor's Advisory Council this afternoon, have been posted on the city's website on the ARPA webpage under ARPA investments. So that I think we'll withhold sending out these slides because it could create some confusion because there were some updates to some of the criteria and formatting change on the guiding principle. So please, after this session forum, check out that webpage and you can download the investment guidelines. The second thing I wanted to point out is I just want to acknowledge that 3 of the 9 members of the Mayor's Advisory Council are participating in this forum, and those are Dr. Kohlberg, Brett Westbrook, excuse me, Brett, and Kamar Telefaro. And so they have been providing advice to the mayor and providing their perspectives, and they have an interest, they have their own personal interest in this topic and subject area, but I want to make sure the other participants were aware. And then finally, hopefully we found the glitch that was not allowing you to see the participants, and that has been corrected. If not, we'll definitely be trying to correct it before the next one. And as we said, it didn't have it in our first forum, so we apologize for that. So I'll turn it back to you, Gina, to start the discussion.
Okay. So Ted will help us to start off the discussion. If you have a comment or a question, if you could raise your hand, if you use that feature, and he will organize our discussion.
No hands yet.
Okay.
Here we go. Go ahead, Roy.
Hi, excuse me. Hi. Thank you for the presentation. let me just preface my question to you on who I am. I'm a resident of Stockbridge. I'm a lawyer by training in the world of philanthropy with a deep tennis background, and we've been test piloting the idea of a nonprofit sports tennis academy for all children of the Berkshires to expose them to what high-end sport learning and combined with education can do for a community. There are some great parallels to doing this in other communities around the country. Not so many examples in rural America, but we've been piloting it now successfully and testing it and conducting surveys with parents. But I'm curious, it's more focused on underprivileged children in sports. Is that something that it seems to fit into this dialogue, but I'm curious as to some feedback because we're always wondering about that.
So, I think this is sports is always an area of bringing kids together that may not have opportunities through other organized sports. So, if you have piloted and tested a program that really, levels the playing field, so to speak. So kids would have equal access to this type of learning sports and education. Also, I think we want to make sure that we're doing the outreach and making this available to youth in West Side and Morningside. It certainly doesn't exclude an opportunity for youth in general. I think Deanna maybe could speak a little bit more on the cost share if you were to offer the program here in Pittsfield, but it would be serving kids from other communities. Then there would be some additional work in developing the budget and how much of the city's ARPA funding would be used to a program that would serve other kids as well outside of Pittsfield.
Okay, thank you.
Deanna, you want to clarify or add to that?
Yeah, these funds are for Pittsfield residents. I would note that other communities in the county have also received ARPA funding. Either, well, I believe we may be the only municipality in the county who received a direct allocation. Others have received allocations through the Commonwealth. And in addition, every municipality in the county has received a degree of allocation as a result of the fact that we do not have a functioning county entity. And so on a per capita basis, what would have been allocated directly to the county has been added to the allocations for the jurisdictions, or maybe their only direct allocation. But we will require a structuring of any proposal so that it is very distinct to serving our residents, and reporting will have to demonstrate that that is adhered to. As you can tell from the criteria that from the guiding principle to the goals to the evaluation criteria, you can see we are emphasizing those families and residents of the city who were hurt specifically by the pandemic. This is about recovery from the pandemic.
Okay, next up we have Sarah. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thanks. So I'm trying to wrap my head around how much money this actually is. And all I can say is that it seems like an awful lot. We have plenty of ideas here, and I know that my colleagues on the phone also do. I still don't know if those ideas, even if we were as ambitious as possible, could spend everything down. And so I'm curious if y'all have any inclination to put dollar amounts around each category of allocation, or maybe suggest to us that we limit proposals to a size of X, or even start at a size of Y as we develop ideas. I'd love to get some feedback from you on how you're thinking about this.
So Sarah, it is not an infinite amount of money. It does on the surface appear to be a great deal of money. But we will not be putting funding limits or total amounts of funding available. The investment guidelines, which have just been posted, do illustrate some proposed, I guess you would call it our dynamic guidelines of how we would like to see the funding allocated for the first 20 million that has been received by the city. And you'll see that the services to those communities and residents that have been disproportionately impacted is a high priority. We also will be doing our best to spread the funding that is available and to focusing on those that rank highest in terms of the evaluation criteria. And I guess my final comment would be, as I'm sure you are very aware, there are many other agencies at the state and federal level that also have ARPA funding. In fact, it's a very small portion of the 1.9 trillion that has been allocated to local governments. And so I would encourage every organization, and I hope you already are, to be watching the federal agencies that you work with, as well as the Commonwealth, for other sources. And we'll be asking that question along the way as well. So I've given you a non-answer.
And so along those lines, in the chat, there's a question from Kelly. Of the 20 million for this year, is it correct that 7.3 million has already been invested as of October 14th, as noted on the city website?
Yes. And you'll also see in that guidance the percentage anticipated to be invested in each of the categories.
Okay, next up where'd you go, Aaron? Did you have a question, Aaron?
Sure. I actually many questions, but I'll try to limit them. We heard at the community meetings that the ultimate decision of the funding decisions were going to be the mayor's. Is that still the course of action, or will it be going through the council that's been established?
The advisory council is advisory to the mayor and is not expected to be making decisions on the awards. So as statutorily set forth by Treasury, the mayor is a final decision maker. We do anticipate evaluation groups being used or individuals being involved in the evaluation. And as I believe Gina mentioned, the evaluation criteria will be weighted, and that weighting and how we'll be doing that is in the investment guidelines that have just been posted.
And could it be used for expanding? It sounded in the criteria that it was really for new projects and not shoring up or expanding existing projects. Am I reading that wrong, or because you're laughing at me, Deanna.
Well, no, I'm smiling. Erin, at one of our community forums, I believe you were the one that made a very passionate pitch for thinking outside of the box. The mayor has referenced that a number of times since then. And that's been reflected in nature of the criteria. Also, we need to remind everyone this is a one-time funding source, and all must be obligated, as Gina said, by the end of 2024, and all spent by 2026. And so just expanding existing programs, you'll have to determine for yourself based upon the criteria that has now been developed, how that would rank.
Thank you.
That's it on the hand raising at the moment. Okay, go ahead, Kamar.
Just trying to avoid the awkward silence. No, I'm kidding. It's been raised now at 2 community stakeholder gatherings. This idea of ARPA monies being used for people who live throughout the county but are provided services in Pittsfield. I'm wondering if there have been any conversations with other municipalities on region-wide strategies for either childhood development, early childhood development, or youth intervention services that would allow municipalities to fund proposals jointly, rather than just from Pittsfield's pot of money, you know, potentially being Stockbridges and Daltons and Lanesboroughs and Pittsfields.
So, so I think, you know, Deanna addressed this pretty well this morning, in that, you know, we kind of expect to see organizations want to have a broader scope of a youth intervention or childhood childcare services, maybe serving beyond the Pittsfield area or Pittsfield residents. And, you know, so in those cases, what we will look to see is that there is a funding source from those other communities being served. And one of the other requirements will be in the data collection and the evaluation piece that will show specifically how that funding in Pittsfield really benefited and impacted our Pittsfield residents specifically. So there would have to be a really robust data collection system as well in order for a proposal to be a more region-wide or county-wide approach, as Kamar mentioned. Does that clarify, Kamar?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. But I was also thinking in terms of, like, say there is a high school student who lives in Pittsfield and attends PHS, but needs to find new housing. And there's a program that a service provider in Pittsfield has that could place that student in housing, but the housing is in Lanesboro. Like, I know that doesn't sound realistic, but just suppose it happened. Like, in that instance, what would the guidance, I suppose, be, other than just reporting?
So I guess it depends on who the partner organizations are. You know, we've known that we're going to see proposals that are, you know, very creative, and, you know, and to solve our current day problems, we do have to think outside of the box and get creative. So I think if the you know, if the organizations have a way of tying this all together, and there's a cost share among the different entities, cross towns, you know, it can be considered. So I don't want to say we would rule it out. Oh, Deanna, you're muted.
I think it'll depend on the specific program that's being proposed, and who the audience, who the intended clients are. And so it's hard to answer that one, and how the agency proposes to ensure that it's benefiting a Pittsfield resident. Now I see Jason has put two questions, I think really a follow-up to each other, and I can read that. Can funds be allotted to Berkshire Housing and DCF to focus on youth aging out of DCF custody and provide transitional housing of some sort to best support the successful integration into society without the general family structure it takes to do so? And then following that, renovations to organizations such as the Boys and Girls Club, CYC, for our youth to have safe places to engage in appropriate social interactions with trusting adults around them. I think both are very definitely within the intent of the ARPA funding. The first being a response to a need that is not being served by other funding sources at this time.
Ready? We got Tanya. There you go.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. The problems that I'm seeing with the residents that I'm currently working with is that they're applying for the RAFT funding and they are getting the money from the RAFT, but then they're having a huge problem trying to find affordable housing in the area. So they might get $3,000 to move in, but how do they go from month to month if they're at a set income? Another issue is that RAFT is a great program in what they're doing and everything, but their backlog is huge right now. And for them to receive more funds would be great, but they also need more employees to be going through these applications and processing them out so that a lot of people are homeless right now and trying to find housing, but it's taking a long time for their application to be viewed and processed and then turn around and give them the money. So they're going 4 months out. And even the people that are behind on their rent say they're behind $1,000 right now, which could be a month or 2 months behind. But again, by the time that the application is being processed, now they're 4 to 5 months behind in rent. Another situation that I'm seeing is new management companies are coming in and taking over the buildings that are currently in Pittsfield, and they're raising their rent from $800 a month to $1,000 a month, which something that could have been kind of affordable is not affordable at all to these households anymore. And then to turn around and say, you know, well, you can fill out the RAFT application and we can get you the funds to move, but again, 4 to 5 months out. So I think that there just needs to be more affordable housing in this area and more access to it. Thank you so much.
If I can, Tanya, thank you. Shortage of affordable housing, the RAFT backlog, and increasing rents. I think we're at the core of your very good examples. And I want to start by responding by you. I hope you noticed that funding for navigators is something that was included. It's something that's of very significant interest to the city and the mayor. And we recognize the learning and value of the Navigator program that Habitat has in place. And we hope other organizations will consider putting in place similar navigator programs. Now, in terms of the shortage of affordable housing, yes, we are hoping that we can invest some of our funds in affordable housing, and that we can then increase our ability to secure the funding that the state, ARPA funding that the state is proposing to dedicate to affordable housing development. So that is something we are looking seriously at. The timing of our projects, we've got to get them going. And so we have been working with a number of developers, but we do see those likely being addressed in the second round more than the first round. First of all, in terms of the raft backlog, we and others have been advocating for state ARPA funds to help expedite those programs to reduce the amount of time that people have to. And the increasing rents, tough one, outside of ARPA, not really related to ARPA, but my department is working with the health department to at least increase some of the attention to the condition of the housing, so we have less exploitation of the shortage of housing and increases of rents, and improve the quality of the housing that we have available. So two answers related directly to ARPA. The other is in other programs.
Any other questions, Ted?
No, I think that's it. Tonya, no, you put your hand down and it's now back up again. Did you have something else to say?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, there we go.
So when I was at the meeting that Deanna held at Morningside, and we were talking about the ARPA fundings, and we did surveys about where we would think that they would need to be, there was also something in there for utility payments and stuff like that to the residents of Pittsfield. Now, I know that a couple organizations get funding for their neighbor to neighbor program. It goes super fast because there's so many people that are in need of getting their bills back on track right before they get shut off. Thank God fuel assistance is an option right now, and all of that to help. But I'm just thinking with the ARPA funding and them saying that it would be towards utilities and bills for residents, is that going to be additional funding to those agencies that already have the neighbor to neighbor program set up, or is that going to be something different through the city of Pittsfield?
You're right, the utility payment did come up. I believe you and Carolyn were the ones that brought it first to our attention. We have learned since then that there is a fair amount of ARPA funding flowing directly to utility companies to help those that are behind. We've been trying to learn more about that. So for this round, we didn't see direct payments of utility bills as one of our higher priorities. But if you want to propose that and have the documentation to support the difference it would make, I wouldn't discourage you from doing that.
That's it so far. No more raised hands.
Okay. Along those same lines, I just want to go back to, I mean, we don't have to go back and look at it, but I'm just going to refer back to the expenditure categories just to point out that job training assistance is also an eligible category. So if organizations are looking at community navigators, or like, you know, Raft is hiring more employees to process applications or something like that, the job training assistance is also available to expand those programs. All right. So Deanna, do you want to add anything else before we close? No, Ted, no final comments or questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I'll just remind everybody to just continue to check in with the City of Pittsfield website under ARPA investments, and you'll see the investment guidelines and expenditure categories. You'll also see the email info, I'm sorry, ARPA@cityofpittsfield.org, where you can ask any follow-up questions you have, and we'll either Deanna or I will get back to you, because we know once you really get into it, additional questions will come up, and so we're here to follow up with you. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, very much for being part of this process with us, and wish you a happy holidays, and keep in touch.